Hi everyone, I'm Kelly O'Horo, and this is Adaptable, Behavior Explained. Hi there, welcome back to Adaptable. Today we're going to take a dive into the world of gender stereotypes, and we're not just talking about the issues, we're looking at real life examples, and we're going to figure out steps we can all take to break free from these outdated norms. It's a big topic and one that touches on everything from our personal lives to our professional worlds. So let's get into it and imagine a future where everyone's free to be themselves, no boxes, no labels. First, we have to start with why this topic must be discussed and the history behind why gender roles used to be more necessary and why they need to evolve. So gender roles are considered outdated by many because they're based on societal norms that ascribe specific attributes or roles to people based on their gender, like the idea that men should be breadwinners and women should be homemakers. These stereotypes can limit personal freedom and ultimately can lead to inequality. They often prevent people from pursuing interests and talents because they don't align with the traditional gender expectations. I can remember early in my marriage, I remember thinking, like the boy is supposed to do the outdoor things and do the cars and the oil changes, and the girl is supposed to do all the interior housework because that's how I was raised. And in my husband and my marriage, we very quickly realized that wasn't going to work in our marriage because there were things that I had more affinity toward that would have been considered, more of the male role. And he did things inside that I would have thought would be more, the female role. And so we really changed the gender expectations in our family system quite early in our marriage when it came to traditional roles and expectations. Historically, gender roles worked in the context of societal and economic structure that were different from today's world. For example, in the early 20th century, most women did not work outside of the home at all. And those who did were primarily young and definitely unmarried. This was due in part to cultural norms, like the nature of the work available and legal restrictions. I mean, can women even vote? No. So women's work often included things like family businesses and home production of goods for sale, which wasn't really captured in the labor and statistics information. Additionally, African American women were more likely to participate in the labor force than white women at the time, largely because they were more likely to remain in the labor force after they were married. The roles were also a reflection of the economic and technological realities of the time. So much has changed when it comes to technology and abilities. For instance, agricultural technology, language, geography, pre-industrial societal characteristics, family structures, religion, historical experiences and shocks all play a part in shaping gender roles historically. So, for example, like in World War II, when generally all the men left, many women joined the workforce in ways that they would not have otherwise done so because of what was going on in the world. These roles emerged in response to specific events that were going on that tended to persist even after historical conditions changed. So I went to work, for example, my grandmother, she went to work during World War II and she worked at Boeing, and she continued to work for quite some time after the war was over because she liked it and it changed their economic situation, and that was enjoyable for her. In today's world, with increased education and technological advancements and a shift towards more egalitarian values in many families, these historical gender roles aren't seen as necessary or even beneficial and can be kind of stagnant. Instead, there's a growing recognition of the importance of allowing people to define their own paths, free from constraints of outdated gender expectations. This shift not only promotes personal fulfillment, but also benefits society by allowing a more diverse and dynamic workforce and community. Think about it. We all bring something different to the table. And if we can all be considered as part of what decisions are made, then it can often be more dynamic and more beneficial. And this is not just in the workforce, this is at home. Historically, men were not considered caretakers of the children. That was kind of the women's job. And when you think about the necessary, important roles of a dad and a male influence in the parenting, it's really important. Exposure to certain types of information, media, social interactions can really influence the development and reinforcement of gender stereotypes and biases. So let's talk about how exposure can shape these perceptions. Think about early childhood and education. From a young age, people are exposed to gender stereotypes through even just the toys that they play with, the color that we decorate their rooms, the books that they read, the behaviors they observe in adults around them. So they're being taught by what they're presented with and what they see their parents and the other grown-ups doing. And so educational settings can either challenge or reinforce these stereotypes, affecting students, subject choices, and future career paths. When it comes to media representation, the portrayal of genders in media roles is crucial. Stereotypical representations in media can strengthen beliefs in gender stereotypes and endorse traditional gender roles without even meaning to do so. And they can even foster sexism and violence in men while stifling career ambitions in women. So we want to look at all of these things when we talk about exposure and how we are kind of programmed to do specific things. There's social learning that happens where we're observing and watching, and that can be limiting. You know, girls don't do any outdoor chores, and they don't mow lawns, and they don't take the trash out. And some of those ideas can really limit a sense of I can and a sense of I'm capable and competent. And we don't mean to be teaching this. It's just part of how we are programmed. Studies have been shown that both adolescents and adults exhibit biases in social learning, where they tend to copy behaviors associated with their own gender or those that align with gender stereotypes. I had a family that I'm working with where just the other day, there was something that came up with one of the kiddos about how frustrated he was that it was always his job to take out the trash because the boy has to take out the trash. And this was limiting for the girl later because then she wasn't allowed to do certain things because she was a girl because it wasn't as safe for her. And so they created some competition and some distress and frustration even between the siblings because of the way the parents were inadvertently reinforcing gender biases around chores and capabilities. This can perpetuate gender expectations in academic, career choices, and family systems. And so we want to be really mindful that this is part of what we are doing inadvertently. If we want to counteract exposure to sexism and things like that, interestingly, sexism doesn't always reinforce biases. In some cases, it can motivate individuals to become less biased. And as they become more aware of negative impacts, such as stereotypes and that actively work against them, they can course correct and change direction to hopefully change the direction that they were acting in. And of course, we can't ignore implicit bias. We all have implicit bias. Even brief exposure to stereotypical content can strengthen our implicit biases. For example, stories that associate math with males can increase math and gender stereotypes among children, because what we are exposed to can either reinforce or challenge gender stereotypes and biases. It's important to be mindful of these influences and strive for inclusive and diverse representations in all aspects of society to promote gender equality. It's also important to recognize that early conditioning is really part of it. Imagine a childhood unbound by the colors of pink and blue, where toys don't dictate our destiny. The emotional toll of limiting toys is profound, stifling creativity and self-discovery. It puts us in a box, and we don't think that we can leave that box because of what we've been given. And a lot of people don't think this is real, but it really is empowering. I see it all the time. I've seen it in my own grandkids. You know, we get them dolls for the girls and doll houses for the girls, and the boys get tools and trucks. And, you know, it would be really interesting to see what happens if we flipped that to see how do they deal with and how do they show up. And it's actually pretty cool because they actually want to do both. Both the kids would be interested in both of those things. So a thing that you can do is encourage play that transcends gender, offering a variety of toys and celebrate the unique interests of each child. There's a stark difference between women in the workforce with things like coding and electronics and engineering and computers, and the emotional consequence of educational stereotypes is a generation of unfulfilled potential. When we think about the way our society is changing, we really need a full workforce who's good at all sorts of things to make sure that we are adequately prepared societally. So something that we can do is advocate for educational programs that defy gender norms, ensuring that every child can follow their passion and their interests and that they have the supports to do so. We want to make sure that we don't limit career paths and ultimately make sure that people have an opportunity to go in whatever direction they want. Because if there's a person in a gender that goes into a workforce that's traditionally not that gender, they're trailblazers. And the emotional cost of a career stereotype is a workforce that's robbed of diversity and innovation. So we want to foster a hiring culture that values diversity of thought and experience regardless of gender. We want to make sure we do workplace dynamics and Salesforce salary audits because that's a step towards equity, but the emotional impact of pay disparity is a sense of undervaluation and injustice, and it creates resentment in the workforce. So we want to campaign for equal pay and recognition in the workplace. It creates an environment where everyone feels valued and equal, and recognize that's important for good culture in a workplace. Relationship roles that are stereotyped and domestic roles lead to emotional strain and resentment in relationships. So we want to engage in open dialogue with our partners and equitably share household chores and responsibilities, caretaking, and foster a relationship based on mutual respect and support. If we're in gender stereotypes, there's limiting factors related to emotional repercussions of these unaddressed stereotypes and feelings of confinement and frustration. So we want to educate ourselves and others about harms of gender stereotypes and promote a culture of understanding and acceptance. Another factor we need to look at is breaking the bias. One way we can do that is through paternity leave and have that be a policy that includes both genders. This policy, it's a statement that caregiving is not gender specific. The emotional benefit is a sense of shared responsibility and bonding, and ultimately the offspring benefits from having both parents there in those early years. Something that a lot of people don't know is that when a baby is born, the male's body temperature actually increases so that as the father is holding the offspring and the mother is kind of tending to the aftermath of going through labor, the baby's warm enough. So we are biologically wired to really need both parents, and we don't typically approach that historically that both parents are equally important. Now, in those early years of bonding, or those early months of bonding rather, with breastfeeding and that, biologically, women are more kind of responsible for the emotional regulation of the offspring, but we really need both mom and dad as part of the parenting throughout the lifespan. So if you're in a leadership role in a company, you can implement inclusive family policies. If you're a parent, you want to embrace social opportunities to deepen family connections, because the social impact of inclusive practices yields more than just better products. They foster a sense of belonging and community. So we want to support businesses and initiatives that prioritize diversity and inclusion, which contributes to a society that values every individual. We want to challenge biases and stereotypes to combat the emotional distress they cause. We want to begin first with introspection and extend to advocacy. We want to celebrate the empathy of boys and the leadership of girls and encourage others to do the same. Imagine a day when toys in the store aren't labeled for boys or for girls, but just for kids. And picture a classroom where every student feels free to excel in math or art, regardless of their gender. Think of a workplace where job roles are filled based on passion and skill and not gender expectations. This is a free world where we would have so much potential dynamic diversity and visibility. And who knows what potential both genders could reach if they weren't limited by gender stereotypes. So when you think about this, remember that every action, no matter how small it is a stride towards a world that values these things, empathy and fairness over outdated stereotypes. So keep pushing boundaries. With every barrier we dismantle, we pave the way for a society that celebrates individuality and shared humanity. Together, we can build a world where everyone has the freedom to be their truest selves. So thank you so much for tuning in today. I appreciate your time. I hope this is helpful. And don't forget to lead with love. It'll never steer you wrong.